Ladies and gentlemen, Trump administration has aggressively weaponized tariff, not merely as an economic tool, but as an instrument for foreign policy and geopolitical leverages. This strategic turn has surprisingly elevated the average tariff rate on US import and burned tension across global market. President Trump's rationale is clear: reduce trade deficit, protect domestic industries, and restore American manufacturing. But the reality is more complex. Tariffs are now being deployed to pressure foreign government, with economic consequences rippling through every sector of our economy.
All changes starting right here and right now. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. It's going to be only America first. Buy American and hire American. No challenge can match the heart and fight and spirit of America. We will not fail. Our country will thrive and prosper again.
The core motivation of Trump administration is an American first economic and political agenda. The administration believes that tariffs are most effective way to correct what it does sees a decade of unfair trade practices by other nations. And everyone knows that the world power, the world largest economy and a major consumer market, the US has immense power. It can ultimately impose tariffs that disrupt global supply chain and significantly harm the economic of traded nation. With the above context, it's very good in the US position right now, right? No, the reality is very different than Trump decides. Let's discuss. This is not just a trade story, it's a story of strategic recalibration, economic risk, and global realignment. The choices of every country will make today will shape the root of industries, alliances, and their place in the world economy. And this story will help the student of business, a school, and finance professionals. Guys, Trump approaches are not merely has come of now. It's way back long. Since 1980, Trump had advocated tariff to eliminate US trade deficit and promote domestic manufacturing, and imposing tariff becomes a major plan of his presidential campaign. Even before his presidency, Trump championed protectionism. His first term saw sweeping tariff on steel, aluminum, solar panel, and washing machines, often justified under national security theme. The most notable move was a trade war with China, where hundreds of billions in tariff were imposed, triggered retaliation from Beijing. Despite the disruption, the trade deficit remained largely unchanged, and supply chains suffered a lot. With all this, Trump, do you know and what was the changes during President Biden regime? Yes, the tariff on China was maintained but applied more selectively, targeted electrical vehicles and solar panels. However, the Trump second term has taken far more aggressive time. In January 2025, he declared a national emergency and imposed 10 to 25% tariff on import from China, Mexico, and Canada. By April, nearly all US imports faced a 10% baseline tariff, the highest average rate in the overall century. Keeping all this in mind while coming, do you know what is the driving factor of this policy? Yes, there are two major global dynamics are driving these policies. The tariff are aimed at weakening China's economic rise and reducing US dependency on Chinese supply chain. The second one is tariff on India, now reaching 50% on main goods, are designed to pressure New Delhi to stop buying discounted oil from Russian oil, which is the US sees as a funding Russia's war effort. This is not just a rival in the word of mouth, it's impacting many Americans and household. Let me explain you the economic impact, what is being facing by the Americans. The consequences are unambiguous. The tariff act as a tax on American consumers and businesses, rising price and disrupting supply chain. Inflation expectations have surged. Sectors like manufacturing, agricultural, and retails are feeling the tension. Strategic industries like AI, semiconductor are also suffering a lot. As tariff raises cost and slow innovations. Guys, you remember during first term under Trump regime, China was only been targeted the way trade war. The China US China trade war has reshaped global supply chain. Vietnam, for example, has emerged a major winner, dramatic increasingly its export of electric equipments to the US. Meanwhile, China export key sectors. Guys, you remember during first term under Trump regime, China was being targeted. The way trade war. The US-China trade war has reshaped global supply chains. Vietnam, for example, has emerged as a major winner for the trade wars, dramatically increasing its export of electrical equipments to the US. Meanwhile, China export in the key sectors remain below pre-tariff levels. In the same way, India facing steep tariff has postponed trade talks and exploring deeper ties with BRICS nations, signaling a shift towards a more multipolar trade systems. While the Trump administration views tariff as a path to economic strength and geopolitical leverage, the evidence suggests they may undermining both. The world is watching and the global order is shifting. The ongoing tariff dispute initiated by Trump administration involve a complex web of stakeholders like India and China mainly and their powers. Guys, let's look at what India and China's overall perspective. Yeah, if you see India under Modi government, under Prime Minister Narendra Modi government, their main interest to protect its domestic industries, especially small and medium enterprises, maintain its strategic autonomy in the foreign policy, like for an example, continuing to buy Russian oil for energy security and seek new trade partners to diversify away from the US. And you know the motivations of their India's main motivates is by national interest and a desire to not to be as a subservient partner to the US. The government is also under pressure from domestic industries and farmers to resist US demands, such as those to import genetically modified crops and dairy products. And US has forgot the India's power. India's power is very large and growing economy. Its status as a major global player and its ability to pivot towards other economic blocs like BRICS. While it cannot match the US in terms of economic size, it can make it potentially costly for the US to escalate by strengthening ties with a rival like China and Russia. And India's having very good strength, like they have a very good foreign policies and largely domestic market in absorb shocks, rapidly growing economy with the global relevances. Yeah, and they have very good strength in the BRICS ties. Guys, yeah, we have thinking that we have very good strength and power and motivations, right? But aside, we have to think the threats what we have in the economic slowdown and job losses, because we are very dependently to the US and the migrations, yeah, from the US. A risk of geopolitical isolation from Western allies, currency devaluation and risk rising import cost. But in the same lens, if you are looking at the China, they have the US counter influence. They strengthen their position as a global economic leaders and use situation to build more cohesive anti-US alliances. And they have China is motivated by the opportunity to demonstrate its support for a country targeted by the US. By standing with India, China can present itself as a defender of multipolar world order and a reliable partner in the face of US unilateralism. This also helps to mend its own strained relationship with India, and they have very good immense power for the economic. Yeah, its long-standing trade war with the US give it a credibility and leverages. It can offer alternative market and financial system to countries like India, undermining the effectiveness of US tariff. Additionally we have BRICS nations like Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. They have their own interest, like enhancing economic cooperation among the members, create an alternative to US-led financials and trade systems, reduce reliance on the US dollars. The tariff on India and Brazil, along with the ongoing pressure on the China, Russia, have inadvertently created a unifying force for BRICS bloc. They are motivated to turn this crisis into an opportunity to strengthen their alliance and push back against US unilateralism. As a collective, BRICS represent a significant portion of global GDP and population. The bloc power lies in its ability to offer an alternative economic and political framework, potentially leading to more multipolar world. The Trump administration tariff strategy is more than a trade dispute. It's a global power play. While US fluctuates in the economic muscle, countries like India are recalibrating their alliances and strategies. The world is watching and the balance of power may shifting. Let's look at the global, regional and global implications, mainly on the economics. Yeah, if you see United States, under the Trump administration, the tariff which has been raised, the average US tariff rate on the highest level since Smooth-Hawley Tariff Act 1933, are largely a tax on American consumers and businesses. While Trump administration has been claims foreign exporters bear the cost economics from the Federal Reserves and OECD and World Bank has downgraded US GDP projections. Although immediate inflation has been modest as a retailer absorb cost, the analysts warn the prices for consumers will rise again. When the companies low cost inventories run out, this definitely will go for a spike. This could lead to a significant increase in the cost of goods, including clothing, electronics, and foods. All the imported items, which are all the mandatory, which are all the basic needs for the American consumers. And if you see, not only for US, if take for an example, the India, they targeted for 50% tariff on Indian goods are expected to severely hit its key export sectors like textile, gem, jewelry, and auto components. Initially estimated from Indian credit rating agencies, they project a direct export loss up to 35 billion, potentially saving of 0.3% to 0.6% of India's GDP growth for this fiscal. And if you see, it's not only an economic problem, it's not only economic downgraded for the countries. And if you see the diplomatic implications, this because of this Trump administration, the use of tariff as a tool for geopolitical pressure, it strained key relationship. The tariff on India explicitly linked to its purchase of Russian oil have created a massive trust deficit, and the effort to cultivate New Delhi as a strategic partner and a democratic counterweight to China. The Indian officials have expressed confusion at the US position, nothing that the Biden administration had previously. Encourage India to buy Russian oil to stabilize the energy market, and this US tariff are accidentally strengthening alternative power incentives by penalizing nations like India for maintaining foreign policy autonomy. The US is pushing them towards more multipolar world. India's swift responses has been strengthened ties with BRICS bloc, with high-level meetings occurring between Indian, Russian, and Chinese officials. This could accelerate the development of alternative trade and financial system that bypass US dollar and Western-led institutions. And if you see, Trump administration actions demonstrate a view of international relations as a zero-sum game, where economic leverages is used for force a nation compliance. This transactional approach risks strange acting allies. This could lead to them aligning with the rival powers hedge against US pressure. If US is taking this as a long-term policy tool, then the economic growth continues to slow, and we can see the inflation rises and the job cuts, and export sectors will impact largely. And the third and the final one, it should not happen for the trade. And if the trade escalate rapidly across major economies, the worst will come. Retaliation from China and Europe leads to global recession. Supply chain will collapse more, and job will be vanished, and international cooperations breaks down further. Keeping all this in mind, we are in a globalization world. Yeah, so we cannot avoid all the trade talks, all the issues or conflicts or the broader issues what is been facing. We have to accept and keep moving forward. Yeah, we have some let's see what can happen to the India for the keeping all this mind. The policy makers from the India, they look the opportunities. Let's see what are all the opportunities openable for the India. India must accelerate its trade diversification effort. This includes finalizing free trade agreement with a new partner in the Middle East, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. The government should also actively promote trade within the BRICS bloc, and the policies should provide targeted support for the small, medium-sized enterprises and key export sectors like textile, gems, jewelry, which have been hit hardest. This can include emergency credit lines, lower insurance premium, and tax incentives. And they can use this tariff as a leverage to strengthen diplomatic ties with nations that oppose US unilateralism. India's firm but calm stance has already earned it public support from nations like China and Russia. Globally, if you see countries, they look the diversified supply chain. Businesses should no longer rely on single country manufacturing or export strategy. They need to build a China plus one or India plus one strategy, relocating productions and sourcing to countries with lower tariff or more stable political environment. Mexico, Vietnam, and nations in Gulf Cooperation Council are becoming increasingly attractive options. They can re-evaluate cost and pricings, conduct a thorough analysis of how tariff affect the total landed cost of goods. Companies may need to adjust their pricing strategy to remain competitive or absorb some of the cost to retain market shares. And there is a possibility of international community strengthen as well. The international communities, WTO, World Trade Organization, and the United Nations should be empowered to address trade disputes. Nations must return to a rules-based system and resist temptation of unilateral actions. And apart from the BRICS nations, there could be the possibility of forming new trade blocs, like countries that are being targeted by tariffs should strengthen their own trade blocs, wherein the BRICS and regional bodies to create more balanced multipolar economic system that is less dependent on US dollar and US consumer market. That's all from my side today, guys. If you learned something valuable, please make sure to like button in order to make YouTuber happy, And for most insightful business and political case studies, please subscribe to our channel.